Yeah, you go. Welcome everyone to our webinar series, Decipher the Dating Code, Solving the Mysteries of Dating and Relationship in the 21st Century. My name is Dr. Dan Amzalag, and I'm your moderator for today's workshop. So here's a little quick bit about myself. I'm a cognitive behavior psychotherapist and marriage and relationship coach, passionate about helping people build healthy and lasting relationships. Now, these workshops today explore the many challenges of modern dating, from online interaction and communication struggles to emotional ability and genuine connection. So, our goal here is to help you navigate today's complex dating scene with clarity, confidence, and purpose. So, joining me today at this workshop is our expert panelist, Karen Covy. She's a divorce coach who brings deep insight and practical knowledge in the field of dating, relationship challenges, and so much more. So before we begin the workshop, I'll invite our guest panelist to briefly introduce herself, as no one can do a better job. Karen, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dan. As Dan said, my name is Karen Covey. I am a divorce coach, a lawyer, mediator, arbitrator, collaborative divorce professional, all things divorce except divorced myself. I am the most happily married divorce professional I know. I've been in the dating world or was in the dating world for a very, very long time as I got married later in life. And right now, I work with people all over the world, taking them from the point where they're starting to wonder, what's going on with my marriage? Should I stay or should I go? And if they decide to stay, helping them do that better, because if their marriage was working great, they're not talking to me. And if they decide to go down the path of divorce, taking them down, the way to do it with less conflict, with less expense, with less, damage to themselves and their children. So that's who I am and what I do.
Beautiful. Well, such a pleasure to have you all here today, including the attendees to this workshop. So I'm looking forward to jump directly into the topic that we're going to cover today. So for everyone attending today's workshop, if you have any question, please keep it to the end, and you could reach out directly to me or Karen for further clarification you may have about the topics that we covered. So what I want to do is first of all, to get started, to be able to discuss with you a real life scenario taken from some of my existing patients dealing with the topics that we will cover. So I'm going to, of course, not give the real name, but I wanted to share with you a brief story about someone that I will call Patricia. So I think that was a couple of weeks ago. She walked into my therapy office carrying more than just a breakup that she just recently had. She carried doubt about herself. So she spoke about her last relationship ending painfully and how dating again felt terrifying. And she always came back by saying, I want to find love. It's so hard now in the dating scene, which I completely understand. But also, one thing that she doesn't do a lot is trust herself, trust her judgment towards others, and how to find the right soulmate. So we briefly discussed about her heartbreak and how we can, to be able to avoid getting into dangerous, I would say, relationship. And of course, her not noticing what are the red flags when she goes on dates. So together we reframed her past. So instead of seeing her pain as failure, she began to see it as education. So lesson learned, like I mentioned, about red flags, emotional availability from men, and her own needs as well. So she realized that she was ready to love again and that she no longer needed to be chosen to feel worthy and that she could walk away without abandoning herself. So before she left the therapy session, we focus a lot on boundaries, not walls that most people put up, but more of the guideposts to protect her heart while staying open minded. So, her journey itself is a reminder for all of us. When we honor and trust ourselves more, we create harmony, attract healthier partners, and build authentic connection. And this is what we're going to cover more with our guest panelist, Karen. So, Karen, here's my first question to you. How is it dating after heartbreak? Now, based on your clients that you have with your coaching practice, how is it to rebuild trust and hope after someone has gone through heartbreaks?
It's definitely a challenge, but you've said so many important things, even in just the first few minutes of this conversation. And the first thing you have to build trust with is yourself, right? Not with somebody else. But if you don't trust yourself and you don't heal the heartbreak that you've just been through first, you're going to bring someone who is broken and upset and fearful into your next relationship with you, which means that that's exactly the kind of person that you're going to attract. So everything starts with you. And so many people, especially after something like a divorce, my clients often tell me, I think my picker is broken. Like
Mhm.
I picked the wrong guy. I don't know that I can do this, and they don't trust that they can choose correctly. And what it starts with, as you mentioned, is reframing how you look at it. If you define success in a relationship as you found one person, you lived happily ever after for the rest of your life, and everything was wonderful, A, that rarely exists. There's relationships always have ups and downs. And two, maybe you picked the right person for that time, but you grew in different directions. It's not that there was anything wrong with your ability to choose necessarily, although there might have been, but it's that you picked somebody and then life took you in two different directions, right?
Mhm.
So it's about rebuilding yourself and saying that relationship wasn't a failure because it didn't last until I was dead. It was really good for the time it was. And then when it started to go not so well, this is what I learned. This is what I missed. This is what I'm not going to make the mistake again in the next relationship. So it's a healing journey after any kind of heartbreak, especially something as big as divorce.
So, but then you just said earlier that if, let's say, someone pick the wrong man over and over again, especially when it comes to narcissistic behavior or those who have abandonment issues, that they will have the tendency to be able to kind of meet someone that can fill this abandonment or they can fill that void that they've been seeking for. But sometimes that void can be toxic. So, how, as I mentioned earlier, those red flags, when is someone going to eventually learn not to keep repeating the same mistake over and over again?
When they do the work on themselves. Because if they're not seeing the red flags, that means that they've been conditioned by their past, by how they were raised, by their childhood, to feel comfort in a certain kind of relationship, even if it's not healthy, even if they consistently go for the toxic person or the narcissistic person or the person who's ultimately going to abandon them, right? Our wounds from childhood dictate who we look for and who we attach to. And so the work doesn't start with the other person. It always starts with yourself and doing some deep work on what are your issues, working with a therapist, working with a coach, working with somebody who can help you identify what are your patterns, because you're not going to see someone else's red flags if you don't even know your own patterns.
Correct.
So, what are your patterns? What do you do consistently and why? And when you start to unpack that and work through the emotions from your past, now you can say, "Oh, that's why I'm attracted to this. That's why I don't see this red flag or that red flag." And then, you're when you actually date somebody and you see the red flags again, now you're actually going to see them. You're not going to ignore them or look away.
So, based on your own experience, Karen, and based on the clients that you see often, there's a new statistic that I read that 81% of the women nowadays are the one initiating divorces. Does that mean that the society of women now finally awakened and they no longer want to be able to make the mistake by staying in a relationship that is not healthy to them?
I wish I could say that that was true, but I don't believe it for a second. I
Okay.
think that the reason that the women file for divorce more often is because they're looking at, I mean, sometimes, yes, they've awakened and they're like, I just can't do this anymore. But sometimes they're the first person who has done the work. Women tend to look at emotions and look at relationships more than men, right? And now women have the ability to support themselves more. So they don't need to stay in a marriage just because their husband is the one making the money. They can go make their own money. So now they're looking at the quality of the relationship and saying, is this what I want? And sometimes the person who files isn't the one who, it's just the person who was the bravest, who is, both people know the relationship isn't working. And the woman is just the one that says, I have to do something. And she has the courage to do it. Not that men don't have courage, but they're often not focused on the relationship. They're focused on other things. So they're like, it's, I'll deal with it later, or it's good enough, or whatever they're telling themselves, even though they feel inside the same way, they deal with it differently.
But do you think that because the society have expected that man is the provider, and because they focus a lot on providing for the family, that they don't have any emotional availability to be able to give or be able to multitask in every aspect of their life, which is giving the love, giving attention, making money for the household, paying the bills, etc. Do you think that we expect too much from the men and they eventually just freeze?
I don't know. I've never seen any research that said that. I know just in general, men tend to focus more. They focus on one thing at a time. Women multitask. Women can focus on many things at the same time, and they don't understand why their husband is like got such a one-track mind. That's just the way that we're wired. So to think that men are only focused on their work and they can't focus on a relationship too, I think is selling men short. I think they can't multitask to the level a woman can, but they don't always have to be so singly focused. But it's a question of desire. Do they want to have the relationship and the same kind of relationship that their wife does? How do they feel connection? And it's about bridging that gap. And the truth is, the polarity between male and female in anything is what causes the attraction, right? So you don't want a man who acts like a woman because there's not going to be any spark
Mhm.
there, right? Unless, so what you want as a woman is a man who acts like a man, but also cares about the relationship. And that's what you're trying to build is that connection with somebody. And it's entirely possible.
So based on people's previous toxic experiences, and now we see with the online dating, with the ghosting, the catfishing, the narcissistic behavior, the gaslighting, and so on and so forth, um, people are no longer trusting meeting anyone online. They are, especially after going through a toxic relationship of someone that they met online. So, what are the indicators, Karen, when it comes to okay, I'm ready to let go of that past. All the future relationship is now going to be indicating the same kind of relationship that I had previously. So,
Mhm.
what triggers in our mind to say, I am ready to love again?
I don't know if it triggers in your mind. I think it triggers in your heart, actually. It's a feeling like, okay, now's the time. It starts with doing the work to heal from the past, because if you don't heal from the last heartbreak, you're just going to bring all those negative emotions with you into the next relationship, and you're going to date the same person again with a different face, with a different name. You're just going to keep repeating the same mistakes until you heal the trauma from your past. Once you do that, then in terms of what are the red flags that you're looking for in online dating, they're huge. I mean, number one, you want to make sure that you talk to someone online, but you get to the point where you're actually meeting them in person, like human to human, as soon as possible. Because that way, like the people that are scammers, they're not going to want to meet you. And
Correct.
you're going to be able to suss that out really fast if you say, okay, we've had a couple conversations. You seem like a nice person. Let's meet for coffee, or let's meet on Zoom, even at least to see that they're a live human being and they look like their picture and it is who you say it is. That's really important today.
But you just said that you have to, now it's a feeling about like ready to love again. It comes from the heart and not from the mind. But then when people are holds their heart in their sleeves and they keep making the same mistake, the mind has to also contribute to the decision-making process. So they have to be smart and not just, emotional. So then there's a discrepancy there.
Well, absolutely. You have to, but it's your heart that tells you, are you ready? Because if your heart's going, no, no, well, then you're not ready, right? You've got to listen to what your heart says. But when it comes to the decision about who do you date and how do you find the right person, then yeah, you better, get your brain online too. And in a perfect world, head, heart, and gut all line up. And that's how you know you're making good decisions. But what is your brain looking for? You're looking for patterns. You're looking for behavior. You're looking for somebody, like stories that jive. I mean, when I was dating, I would have conversations with guys, and I have a very, very good memory. And
Mhm.
so I would, you'd be talking, you'd be asking questions, and I'd be paying attention to things like dates and times and places. And I'd be putting the pieces of their various stories that they tell me, one today, one tomorrow, one the next day. And I'd be putting them all together. And you can just tell if the stories don't line up, if they don't make sense, if they're too fantastical, right? Then you can say, something's off,
Yes.
and that's when your gut goes, wait a minute, you just said that, your last relationship went for 5 years and it ended, a month ago, but now you're giving me stories that happened 2 weeks ago. That's not a month. Like there's something that doesn't add up.
The
And
time.
that's what you're looking for is just basic, and you don't have to, you're not interrogating your date. You're just listening to them, but you're paying attention.
Mhm.
That's where it starts. Pay attention to what people say, what people do, and how they act. And ultimately, that's going to help you put the pieces together to say, oh, wait a minute, red flag, or, oh, no, this person seems like they are who they say they are.
So does that fall under emotional intelligence?
Yes, I think it probably would. It's about being able to pick up the cues
Mhm.
from somebody else, and people, if they're trying to portray themselves as something that they're not,
Mhm.
it'll show. I mean, they can do it for a day, they can do it for a week, maybe even for a month, but ultimately there'll be things that you go, huh, wait, that doesn't make sense, or
Yeah.
that doesn't add up. And the problem is, and the reason you do your own work first is because your mind will pick that, your heart will pick that up, your gut will pick up, something's off. But then your brain actually works against you because you're like, oh, no, 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 that doesn't matter. Or you wash it over, or you don't see it. And the key is, it all comes back to what you were talking about in the beginning of learning to trust yourself, that if your gut is saying there's something wrong, to pay attention and investigate, but not to close your eyes to the reality because you want this to work out so bad that you overlook the red flags and the signs that were there all along.
That's so true. And they always say that it's easy to remember the truth and very hard to remember lies, right?
That's 100% true. And the other thing is listen to what people say. Pay attention. People will always tell you who they are, but
Mhm.
you don't believe it.
That's so
You're
true.
like, no, no, no. He doesn't really mean he's got, he's got a problem with connection, that he's got abandonment issues, or that he's got, like somebody will say something as a joke or in passing, and you're like, no, 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 he doesn't have commitment problems. But then when it comes down to it, you're like, no, he really has commitment problems, and he was really telling you, and you blew it off.
That's so true. But then at the same time, here's a question that a lot of people have difficulty in understanding, Karen, is that um, when you set boundaries or healthy boundaries, you kind of like try to push someone away because you tell them, this is what I want, this isn't what line I will not cross, etc. So by establishing those boundaries, and are you setting yourself for failure because you are setting like more deal breakers to say, no, I'm not going to accept this no matter what? Isn't there some room for flexibility?
The key lies in the word that you used before boundaries, which was healthy, right?
Mhm.
Are you, if the boundaries that you're setting up, for example, a healthy boundary, you hit me once, we're done. Like it's over. That, I think everybody could agree, that's a healthy boundary. But okay, if you don't call within 30 minutes of your saying that you're going to call, we're done. No, something might have come up. Maybe they're busy, or they're, who knows what, right?
Mhm.
So it's about starting by doing your own work and saying, why is this my boundary? Is it my boundary because it's something I value? Is it something that's really important? Or am I being a little nutty and going too far and making so many boundaries that nobody can get in?
Okay, so when it comes to relationship, especially when the the individual have broken up with someone, and then they've been single for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is, and they feel in their heart and in the mind that they're ready to date because they do not want to be lonely or navigate through this very difficult life alone. Doesn't it that kind of like pushes the person to be more welcoming and forgetting really the important things that they've set themselves to abide by, which means like we mentioned the healthy boundaries, but sometimes they will say, am I being too difficult? Am I being too this or too that? And then they start really allowing themselves to be more understanding.
Well, there's a difference between allowing yourself to be understanding and get cutting the other person in a relationship, cutting them some slack because everybody's human and everybody messes up. That's one thing. But coming from a place of despair where you want that relationship so badly, you want that love so badly that you let the boundaries go, that's a whole different headspace. And that's why I say you've got to do your own inner work from the beginning, where you get to the point where you say, and not just say, it's not words, you feel it's like, look, I would love a relationship. I want that real, honest, genuine connection, but I'm happy with myself. And if that doesn't come, I'm not going to sacrifice who I am and the values that I care about for another person. Realistically, if you're going to find that person, that soulmate, that one that you really love, you're not going to have to like set hard, fast boundaries. You can't do that because they're going to be on the same page.
Mhm.
They're going to hold the same values. You're not going to fall in love. Well, you might fall in love with somebody who's totally the opposite of you, but in terms of a relationship, that's not going to work really well, right? So it's about, not being so strict with boundaries. That the other thing is too, it's like when you're on a diet. I don't
Yeah.
know if you've ever had to go on a diet.
Uh-huh.
I have.
Okay.
And when you're on a diet and you say, I'm not going to eat sugar, I'm not going to eat carbs, I'm not going to eat this, I'm not going to eat that, what is the first thing you want? You want that sugar and those carbs, and you want everything you're not supposed to have. And it's hard, right? It's the same thing when you're desperate for love and you go, no, I'm gonna have this boundary, and they can't do this and they can't do that, and they've got to have and by the time you're done setting so many rules, you've put yourself into such a tight box that you can't move. And then one day you're just like, screw it. And
Yes,
you throw up your hands and you do all the things you weren't supposed to do.
correct. Exactly.
Doesn't work.
But then okay, so going with this logic here, someone that is a bit older, more mature, and that has gone through a lot of failed relationship in the past, and they've been single for a while. Okay, Karen, and they said themselves they really basically learn to live alone, learn to be happy with themselves, etc. And they will not need to deal with any BS from any other man or woman. So after a while, more the person is alone and more is it difficult for them to date.
I don't know that it's difficult for them to date. It can be more difficult to get into a relationship, right? But it starts with your desire. What do you want? And desire does not mean desperation. It means I want a relationship. I want a real, healthy, genuine, honest, loving connection with another human. So you start dating. You find a guy. You're like, oh, this is kind of good. I like this. He comes over and he leaves dishes in the sink, or he leaves his socks on the floor, or whatever it is. Okay, who cares, right? It's about you've got to be flexible. And in a perfect world, if you've lived alone by yourself and you're used to things a certain way, you're going to have to get used to the idea that they're not going to always be your way.
Mhm.
And maybe that's okay. And if you can let go of that need to have everything exactly the way you want, you will make room in your life for another person, right? And so that's where, if you really want, if you have the desire for a relationship, some of the details of your daily life are going to have to change. They just are, or you're never going to get what you want. So at some point, you're going to be faced with a decision. Do I want this relationship? And do I want to spend the rest of my life picking up socks? Or do I not care about the socks and I'll take the love? Right?
Yes, absolutely. So I'd like to know first and foremost, as of now, any of the attendees here tonight, today, do you have any question for Karen or for myself after everything that you've listened to? You could unmute yourself and just let me know if there's anything that we said that makes sense or doesn't make sense at all. Anyone wants to be able to join or participate? Anyone? Jane? No? Okay, so if anyone, please just raise your hand or just join in. That's
Oh, sorry, this is Jane. I had to unmute.
oh, okay, go ahead.
Sorry.
Any question for
So I have someone available who is an expert in helping people address issues of divorce and possible divorce. I would like to ask, what do you see as being some leading cause or causes that people end up splitting?
Oh, it usually boils down to, often it's an affair. Um, but if you just leave it at that surface level, you never get down to what was the real problem, which was a breakdown in the relationship. The two people stopped connecting, they stopped being on the same page, and they started growing apart, and that led to one or both of them having an affair. That's one main leading cause. Another is a mismatch right out of the gate. Like you just married somebody who didn't share your values or your lifestyle or your whatever. And the third, honestly, most common one is substance abuse. Because, you start out in a relationship and you don't maybe see it, you don't get that they're drinking a little too much, or you think it's not a problem. And then you get married and the problem gets bigger and bigger and bigger over time. And it gets to the point where it's not okay anymore. And you realize that this isn't the relationship you want.
but also we have the money that is also a contributing factor as to why people are no longer or don't stay together. Because again, one person can be the spender, the other person can be the saver, and that can cause a lot of I would say tension between the couple.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. Did we answer your question, Jane?
Yes, and I just want to say thank you so much. This was very helpful.
Oh, you're welcome.
Excellent. But you can also like at the end, Karen is going to share with all of you her contact information, and so you could actually contact her at any time that you want afterwards. So that's something that we will also send you later on. But there's one thing that I want to share with you actually, Karen, that in the beginning we talked about rebuilding trust. So when it comes to rebuilding trust about towards others or rebuilding trust towards yourself, when it comes to yourself, what kind of exercise can someone do to be able to say, you know what, I screwed up in how I select my mates or my partners? What can I do? What kind of exercise should I do to be able to be more attentive? Like you mentioned about always paying attention to what other people are saying, but sometimes you forget on how to pay attention with yourself. So what are the things that someone can practice before throwing themselves back into a relationship?
Pay attention to how you feel and what's your opinion about anything, right? Because a lot of times in a relationship, you lose yourself and you start, oh, he's having a hamburger. I guess I'll just have a hamburger, or I'll do what they're doing, or and you stop even listening to what you truly want for yourself. So it starts with paying attention inside. How do you feel? Do you want to do this or do you not want to do this? It could be what you're eating, what you're doing, where you're going, what you're reading. Like, doesn't matter. All of the things. And look back, we look at one failed relationship and say, I don't trust myself. There's something wrong with me. I've got a broken picker. Yeah, but look at how many other decisions that you've made in the course of your life that have been good. So instead of focusing on the one failure or maybe even a series of failures, you say, what can I trust myself about? Where do I do well? And you start focusing on the places where your trust in yourself has led you in the right direction and to do the right thing. And you start building on that because you're not always wrong. You don't always do the wrong thing in every situation in life. So focus on what you do well and start paying attention to how you're feeling inside because your inner guidance system is always there. You've just stopped understanding how to listen to it.
So, Karen, before we conclude this workshop, in your divorce practice, what would you tell to the attendees the most common denominator that you see as to what people complain about, either the men or the women?
What they complain about
About the other person, about their.
about the other person. It takes different forms, male and female, assuming a heterosexual relationship. But fundamentally, it comes down to I don't feel seen, I don't feel heard, I don't feel valued, right? And with the men start to feel like they're just a paycheck and the woman doesn't really care about them, that she's focusing more on the kids than on them. And for the women, it's like the man is so busy at work, all he cares about is his job and maybe the kids, but again, not her. So it's about the losing the connection between the two of you as spouses. It happens a lot when you become parents because everybody starts focusing on the kids. You're focusing on your job or taking care of the house or both or all of the above, and you stop focusing on each other, and the distance builds, and nobody's honest about it. And
That's
no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to have the hard conversations, but then the issues just grow bigger and bigger and bigger.
Oh, that's it seems to be very, very common nowadays. So before we shut down this workshop, if you could tell the attendees, how can someone find you, Karen, if they want to reach out to you, etc. This way, if they have any further question about this workshop, they could contact you directly.
The best place to find me is at karencovy.com. That's KARENCOVY.com. There's no E in my version of Covy. And I am on all the socials at Karen Covy.
Beautiful. Well, Karen, and thank you so much for being here today, and also everybody else for taking the time out of their Sunday afternoon to join us and engage with the valuable tips and advice shared today. And again, thank you all attendees for being here as well. Now, we truly hope that you found this workshop to be educational in nature, and we also look forward to welcoming you to upcoming workshop throughout 2026, featuring new expert panelists and a wide range of engaging topic focused on dating and relationship. So I'd like to wish you all a very wonderful rest of Sunday afternoon. And also, we look forward to connecting with you again very soon. Thank you all, and have yourself a great Sunday.
Thank you.